Hey, it's Autumn, and this is just a thought. Hey, what's up? Welcome back. Today is a really good day for a lot of reasons, but for me, it's a really good day because once again, I get to talk to one of my amazing, amazing friends. He's just an incredible human and one that I absolutely admire because of his level of vulnerability. I
Mm.
truly, truly believe in the transformational power of vulnerability. And it's rare that you find people who are willing to open up and really talk about their struggles, their journey, and not just with their inner circle, but with the greater population in order to bring healing and awareness and inclusion to people just beyond. And so I think that that really truly speaks to his heart, and you're going to see that momentarily. But before we get into that, I want to read his bio so that you know and understand a little bit about him. For those of you who don't know, which is weird in and of itself, because I mean, Eric is Eric, and how can you not?
Thank you.
But today, my guest is Erik Raser-Schramm. So excited. He is a connector, a strategist, and a healer at heart. After more than 2 decades serving behind the scenes of Delaware politics, advising governors, speakers, and party leaders, he's come to believe that real leadership isn't about titles, but transformation. Eric's journey has taken him from the halls of government to the quiet of the forest. We're going to talk about that. Can't wait. Where he now helps others reclaim their well being through nature, self care, and resilience practices. As the founder of Odessa Wellness, which I've had an opportunity to visit, it's amazing in there. He is a certified firewalker instructor and a forest therapy guide. Like, who is this dude, right? Eric creates spaces for people to face fear, embrace healing, and grow beyond what they thought was possible. He brings the same integrity and insight that once shaped policy to the deeply personal work of healing others. He leads by consciousness and just a courageous lifestyle. Whether he is in politics or personal growth, Eric is driven by one truth: meaningful change always starts from within. How did I do?
Wow.
Was that
It
good?
was very good. It made me tear up.
Oh,
Like, is she talking about me? Right.
I am talking about you.
Yes. Well, that's
Good,
part of the journey that I'll share. Yeah. One of the hardest things is
good.
to hear about stuff about ourselves, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. But you need to. You need to hear about yourself. I think that's and I'm glad you said that. It's the sometimes the narrative that we tell ourselves is not the
correct.
reality of how other
Correct.
people see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so we have a real responsibility, I think, as a village to show up for the people around us by telling them how we see them, how they make us feel. So I'm
Thank
glad
you.
I got an opportunity to do
Yes.
that for you
Yes. Thank
today.
you.
Cool, very cool. That's a perfect way to start,
It
right?
really is, right? Yeah. It really is.
So today, again, as I kind of alluded to, is very vulnerable. And first of all, I just want to say thank you in advance for your willingness to come on and talk to me and everyone about this journey that you have been on for several years and just taking us through what that looks like. And I guess that would be really honestly the perfect place to start is, we talk about this idea of rock bottom, but there's a lot of stuff that like happened prior to that got us
Right.
there, and just
Right.
kind of like helping me to understand what that looked like for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, to start way back, I was very blessed and fortunate to have a really good childhood upbringing. Picture perfect from the outside in terms of being born and raised on a farm in Western New York, right? The Finger Lakes. We were never rich, but had everything that you could ever need. We never went for food, clothing, etc. But there, as I've done this wellness work and start to realize like the foundation was kind of laid and in a good way, sometimes you could say, right? My father was off the boat from Germany, and we had that picture perfect farm, and not just picture perfect from the arts outside, right? But it was the way that the yards were manicured, the flower boxes, all that type of stuff. And so I learned early on, to look good from the outside. Doesn't matter what's
Mm.
on the inside, right? And again, born and raised, and no regrets. My parents did exactly what they could with what they had, but born and raised
Yeah.
in a conservative family, in the Catholic Church, altar boy, Catholic school. And it started to play into that narrative that I just somehow developed along the way that, to be good enough to be worthy, I had to prove myself to other people.
Mm.
So that kind of
Mm.
sprung me forward, right? All through my adolescence, I had, severe eating disorders, everything from bulimia to anorexia. They'd hospitalize me. They didn't know what to do with me because I was an adolescent male. I had 2 different suicide attempts. All of that kind of came through, and I had realized later in life, right, it was my sexuality. But I didn't know what I didn't know then. I just knew whatever I was, I
Right.
couldn't be. So again, from the
Right.
outside, be something spectacular, be something strong. So, at one point they told my parents I was bipolar and I could never live away from home. So when I went to college, I did a 2-year associate program at the community college, commuted back and forth from home. Then, after that, went to a 4-year college to get my education degree. And then I joined AmeriCorps Vista, which was really kind of the first. I had so many transformational opportunities in my life, but that was the first big one, to leave home. I had never left home,
Yeah.
never, slept on a college campus. And here I was going 1,700 miles across the country, joined AmeriCorps
Yeah.
Vista and got out there. And that was the first time too that I got out there. I'm like, whoa, look at me. And I often joke around with people, but when I flew out there, right, I was a straight Catholic Republican boy. And every trip home, I remember telling my poor father, I remember the first trip home, I was like, hey, I don't know about this Republican thing. The next trip was like, I don't know about this Catholic thing. And you can only imagine when he said, don't come home and tell us next. And
Yeah.
I did, right? But that, so then I came out, and that's when I was like, okay, many times in my life, I no longer do it, that I was like, oh, that was the problem, right? And I'll talk about it, but like, okay, my sexuality was the problem. Oh, my alcoholism was the problem. Oh, my job was the problem. And really never realized that I had everything I needed right inside of me. So, moved to Delaware, after I did my first year in Denver, came to Delaware, and it was amazing. Again, this farm kid from Western New York, and I got swallowed up by the Democrats, and it was amazing. I mean, here's this podunk farm kid from Western New York, and within 2 years being in Delaware, I was running a state Senate race, and I ran Governor Minter's reelection campaign, and I often say to people that, and again, this is now later in life on my wellness healing journey, but politics for me was just like drugs, sex, alcohol, right? It was a fix. It was
That's
something that
good.
gave me a high.
Yeah.
It was something that made me feel so good. And after every
Yeah.
election, right, whether it be Senator Sokola's race in 2002, Governor Minter's race in 2004, Governor Jack Markell, then Treasurer's reelection in 2006, then going to the State House in 2007 and flipping the State House in 2008, starting my own consulting company. After every time, it was like, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. But then the next day, I was looking for my next fix. And it was all, now I can look back on it, and it was to make me feel like I was worthy, to make me feel like I could be loved. And that people feel like they needed
Validation.
me, right? So, that was
Right.
the whole trajectory for 22 years. And then, I was so blessed and fortunate. It's coming up on 2 years in July that, after I'd been sober for 2 years, my mental health took a crash. And I just remember thinking, I didn't get sober to feel this freaking miserable. And I would always
Right.
say to my husband, like, I'm not going to kill myself, because he was, kind of worried about my mental state. I'm like, but I think
Yeah.
you and the kids are better off without me. And I just felt that. Like, something was like,
Yeah.
they don't, need to deal with this baggage. And I kept having this fantasy of living on a mountain in a rusty trailer with uneven sheer curtains blowing in the wind. And I remember I'd say that to my husband. He'd be like, and how long is that going to last? I'm like, I don't know, but it was there. So it landed me in Utah, as I was saying, to this 3-week wellness retreat where my eyes started to open, right? I started to, I was exposed to all different wellness modalities. The retreat was obviously, it wasn't a retreat to get you clean and sober. You had to be clean and sober when you went there. But we spent the mornings hiking in canyons in the mountains. The afternoon, you always had everything. You'd always have 5 appointments. You always had a talk therapist, your personal trainer, and then, you were exposed to everything from Reiki, meditation, yoga, rapid eye movement therapy, sound bathing, energy work. And And through all that, it started to unleash all this crap that I had down in me, right? So every time I thought I figured out what the problem was, right? There was no problem. I was good enough. It was me, but that type of stuff was
Mhm.
buried. And and then it was just amazing because I finished that 3 weeks, and I just had this moment from the Salt Lake City, Utah airport where I remember texting my husband and saying, like, I don't need politics to be real and relevant. I just need me and what's around me. And it was, I know it was very taboo for everybody back here. Jonathan was very supportive. I think people were kind of like, what's happening to him? What's he doing? But it was the
Yeah.
beginning of this amazing wellness journey. And I like to call it wellness and healing kind of together, because I
Mhm.
spent the last 2 years really replicating what I did in Utah. Right. But that's how I ended up in forest therapy. I initially went just to another tool in my toolbox to help myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can share this with other people. The fire walking, but then, talk therapy for the last 2 years. I just recently went from once a week to once every other week. And I said to my therapist, are you sure? Like, right. Because I just, I took time once a month to deep tissue massages. Once a month,
Yeah.
I would go to the chiropractor to get my body in alignment and make sure. I made sure that,
Right.
I got outside for an hour every day. And just some of these things that are just so basic that started to make me realize, oh, wait.
They change. They
Yeah.
change things.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So you said a lot there, like so many things, and I want to back up for just
Yep.
a second, and ask you, was there, especially because there's some like pivotal moments that I think
Yeah.
happen. Obviously, you sitting at the airport and deciding I don't need this anymore. That's kind of an epiphany, a pivot moment that has
Yeah.
changed the trajectory of your life now. But what was the thing like? What opened up for you that you said, like, I got to get sober. Like, this
Yeah.
is not working for me, and I need
Yeah.
to
Well, to
figure
back up
out
to that piece, my sobriety, so, one day at a time, hopefully I'm blessed to get to October 12th of this year, which will be 4 years. My
Thank
my rock
congratulations
bottom
early.
with sobriety was a true rock bottom. I mean, I never thought I had a drinking problem, right?
Yeah,
The classic story that everybody shares. The wild part is, and I often share this with people, like, I remember watching an after school special. Remember those that used to be on TV at 4 o'clock
yeah.
when we got home from school? And the woman who was an alcoholic was sneaking her vodka from under the kitchen sink.
Mm,
So I thought, unless
mm,
I hid it under the kitchen sink, right? Meanwhile, I had
wow.
bottles of bourbon hidden in the pantry, the attic, the hay barn, the hay shed.
Yeah.
But I wasn't an alcoholic because I wasn't drinking my vodka from underneath the sink.
Right.
COVID happened. The year of COVID, I lost my father to ALS. He was diagnosed July of 2019. And it was an awful year. And then obviously COVID
Yeah.
happened, and I just self-medicated, and I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So Indigenous People Day, October 12th of 2021, for whatever brilliant reason, it was the first time during COVID that my husband was working and my kids were at daycare. So I decided at 8 a.m. to start drinking bourbon. And my last memory was, oh, I got to quit drinking bourbon by 3 p.m. to go pick up the kids. And Autumn, I
Yeah.
blacked out and I drove and picked up my kids. The most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that could have been done. I mean, that story would have been all over the news. I could have killed somebody. I
Yeah.
could have killed my kids.
Yeah.
But when I got home, my husband was afraid that something was going on, and he videotaped me arriving with the kids because he was afraid I was going to say I didn't have a problem, and that the ultimatum was laid out. And I'm so blessed to this day that it just
That's
clicked
so
with
good.
it clicked with me, right? Like, I knew
Yeah.
I'd lose my kids, I'd lose the marriage,
Right.
I called my primary care and got in with her right away, and started AA that night. And the journey went from there. I've learned through this entire journey, like, I always used the alcohol as social lubrication. I used the
Mm,
alcohol, like, everybody always thought I was this wild extrovert. I was when I was on 2 or 3 drinks. I could go to
yeah.
talk with anybody. I could work any room. But then I got sober, and I started to have to feel these feelings and emotions sober. And I
Mm,
was like, what the heck is this? So that was,
yeah.
that was like the first pivotal moment. I mean, coming out, right? But then that kind of,
Yeah.
oh, this is life. And then that kind of then led to Utah. But it was hard. And it took 2 years of still being in politics to not realize, right? Okay. And it's so hard in the beginning, and they tell you just a day at a time and not try to take
Right.
everything on. But I am a type A personality. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a fixer. Like, right. I'm a strategist.
Go getter.
So I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, go big or go home with everything that I've done.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying to me, the power of the pause, a day at a time. And what I've still
Mm,
found, which is the
that's
most
so
beautiful
good.
thing, is that's going to be until the day
Yeah.
I leave this physical earth, right? More will be
Yeah.
revealed every day. But
Right.
that drinking was such a, it's still so monumental for me because it's just dealing with life on life's terms, dealing with thoughts, with feelings, emotion, with happy times, sad times, right? Like I remember always thinking this too shall pass. And I would use that in terms of things that are bad. But I've realized
Yeah.
even sober now, well, this too shall pass, even great moments. So that's why you got to live in the moment.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything
Absolutely.
passes. Yeah. So
Right.
that
Time
sobriety was
continuously going.
definitely a pivotal point that I couldn't have done the rest of the work. But it's just wild to look back.
Which is like I never knew.
Nobody did. I mean, that's the
Never
craziest thing.
knew.
And to this day, people are still like, Eric, we had no clue. And it's
Right.
funny. I've learned talking to people like there's high bottom drunks and low bottom drunks, and I didn't realize I was a high bottom drunk, right? Which is just like a high functioning, right? Like
Gotcha. Gotcha.
you're
You're in
privileged, you're on the right
yeah.
side of the tracks, like you had everything together. But I just look back at so many times that world could have come crashing down, and that's too where the other great thing for me on this journey is I always had this resentment towards my perceived higher power / God then. What I've
Mm,
learned in sobriety is we all have a higher power. It can be whoever you want it to be. It can be
mm,
Jesus Christ, the Lord and Savior. It can be God. It can be the
yeah.
breeze that hits you on the back of your neck. And once I
Yeah.
finally realized, like, my God is not a punishing God. My God is not a punitive
Mm,
God. My God
yeah.
made me exactly the way I am. And
Yeah.
also, right, so many of these experiences have helped me learn and grow. Right. I
Yeah.
wouldn't anything that I've
Absolutely.
shared and that I will share, like I would never go back if I had the opportunity to change that because I wouldn't be the person I'm sitting here today as, right? Like it's made me empathetic, it's made me understanding, it's made me love people. But it goes back
And
to that. I just think that
yeah.
ultimate, like, I left home joining AmeriCorps Vista, which the whole goal is to fight poverty and promote literacy, to help
Yeah.
people. And I will never regret being in politics for 22 years because it's now given me my platform, meeting people just like you, right? We would have never met.
Right.
But it's so
Right.
wild to think it was that little moment of joining AmeriCorps that what gave me this springboard opportunity,
That's right.
right?
That keeps
And just the
pushing you.
network
Yeah.
of people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really good. First, I want to say that it I think that that's really important that you pointed out that your alcoholism didn't look like what you thought it was.
Right.
And that's what's really important is that we're always sort of doing this comparison thing
Yeah.
where it's like I'm not as bad as that or I'm not this is not
100%.
about that.
Yes. Right. I mean,
It's not about that.
my problem was my perception of an alcoholic. I thought an alcoholic was a
Right.
person who was homeless, who was drinking
Right.
alcohol in a brown bag on the street begging for money. Right. I did
Right.
not know that there was high functioning alcoholics.
Right.
Right.
So
And,
that in of itself is a
yeah.
mind shift that people need to recognize
Right.
that if this is something I think with the real and you tell me if you agree with this, I think the real uh lesson in all this is if you are using anything because you talked about politics, you talked about alcohol, some people
Drugs, sex. Yeah. All
drugs,
of it.
sex. Like I use shopping. Like
Right.
whenever you are
Food.
using
Yeah.
something, food, whenever you are using something to keep you numb or to keep you from addressing things, that is when it has become a problem.
Yeah.
And so, regardless
And
of
not
what
just a
that looks like,
problem, right? But something that's really holding you back. I mean, it doesn't allow you to move
absolutely
forward. I mean, you
right.
you think you're fixing it. And I remember early on, I was probably 13, 14 the first time I saw a therapist and was talking about my bulimia. But I remember it was just like that eating felt so good, right? Then you felt so disgusting. That
Right.
purging was the absolute best thing in the world. But then the second you were done, you felt like the dirtiest,
Yeah.
grossest. So it was
Yeah.
just this series of emotions and feelings that
Yeah.
then once you're like, okay, now I'm not going to do that. Let me get to the root of what is causing that. And
Right.
that's what so
And
many
that's
of
the
us,
thing.
and I did, I mean, right? Like I'll be 48 in 3 weeks, you know, I'm looking like I was like 45 before I could start like digging deep in. Like, what is it? And now what
Yeah.
I can tell you, Autumn, the majority of the time, if I really dig down, right, it's stuff that could have happened, but it's usually it's like, what was my role in it? But it often goes back to fear. Something started with fear.
100%.
Yes,
100%.
fear. And even now, like,
Trying to
I'll have moments where
understand.
like I want
Yeah.
to get mad at somebody, and I'll be like, whoa, what's my role? And then like there's some little ounce of fear, right? Some
Yeah.
nit.
Yeah.
But you think about it, like I was programmed for 45 years to that fear was what drove me.
Yeah.
Right? That fear was
But
what caused me to
I
work
want to say
hard.
this.
Yeah.
I want to say this. I want to say this because I don't want you. This is the medical in me that's getting
Yes.
ready to come out for just a second. That we as humans are fear like advert, right? We
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
constantly trying
Yeah.
to avoid pain,
Yeah.
right? So
Fight or flight,
that
right? Like it goes back to the
absolutely,
caveman
absolutely.
days, and like that's
Yeah,
how you survive.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're always trying to avoid pain, whatever that
Yeah.
looks like. And so some of us do it in healthy ways and some of us do it in unhealthy ways. But ultimately, we're trying to keep from being in a space where we are uncomfortable, unsafe, whatever that looks like, and whatever, emotionally, physically, all of the things.
Yeah.
So a question that I have for you with this is, you went from a place of sort of numbing
Hmm.
and then you talked about like all these feelings and emotions and things that have now like broken free now that and you've had to deal with. Who who are you not numb? Like within
Oh
yourself. Like
gosh.
how
I mean, who I am not numb is, I mean, part of me is like, I feel like I should have been like in my 30s and 40s, like back in the 60s and 70s, and I would have been one of the best hippies in the world.
you are a hippie.
But then I think, right, like all the drugs and alcohol that was there. But I think what I
Yeah.
am at my core is like a kind human being who just wants peace and love,
Yeah.
right? And who, I just felt this emotion come on. Like, it's okay to show emotion and feeling.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
okay to be who you are. And I think that's, Autumn, how I honestly relate with so much. And I think, whether it's the forest therapy, the sound bathing that I'm getting into, the fire walking, it's just, I have this ability to see into a person and to see that, whatever, like, I don't know what the piece is there, right? But I know here's a path I can lead you down, and that path will help you. Is the path fire walking? Is the path the forest? Right? As I often say to people, like, I'm not the therapist, I'm just the guide, and I
Yeah.
provide the tools for you. But it's also just been so beautiful, the people that have come into my life now since I've been on this journey. I mean, it was beautiful before, don't get me wrong, right? Again, meeting you and others, but it's just like, I was talking to somebody. I went to a barbecue up north yesterday, um, in the fellowship that I'm in, and one of the women there was just like, "Well, how do you recruit and advertise for your business?" And I just had a moment where I was like, "I don't." Right? It's almost like it's attraction versus promotion, and I've just been
That's good.
so blessed, right? And but
That's
again, I've
good.
learned that because being
Yeah.
sober has taught me, like, I was the director and I directed everything. I directed everybody else's lives, and in politics, right, I was trained to do that and I could do
Control.
that. But then the
Control.
control issue, right, and just letting go of control and knowing
Yeah.
that my higher power is going to give me what I need, whether I like it or
Exactly
not.
what you mean.
Right. And
That
I
part.
emphasize that not because, like, I'll have these reality checks sometimes that are just a punch in the gut. But then it's so beautiful because I'm like, I'm sober now and can feel it and can realize, oh, right. Versus that, screw that. That's a reason to go drink. I'm going to show
Right.
whoever, right,
Right.
tonight. Like,
Right.
but it's just wild that this type of work, and sometimes my husband laughs. He's like, because the more and more I meet people that are in these modalities, he's like, boy, you guys are really in it really not to make money, are you? And I was like, it's not
Well,
about the money, right? It's about to help and heal people. And the reality is, like, if you're on, this is my belief, right? If I'm on this path and I'm doing the next right thing, the money will flow in a way that it needs to. This is
100%.
not a like a path I'm on to get rich. This is not the next scheme that I'm going to be able to get on, Facebook or
Uh,
TikTok or some paid infomercial to sell. Like, and it's
Right.
also the first time in my life that, like, the work that I'm doing is actually making me heal probably more than the people I'm working with.
Well,
Right.
the healing, it's both. It's both. It's for
Correct.
you
It
and for
is
others.
just
Yeah. It's
100%.
a
I mean,
process.
I'll have moments. I was very, blessed and fortunate to have like a 6-month contract with Impact Life, which provides
Uh-huh.
recovery housing for folks that are in recovery throughout the state. And I was down in
Yeah.
Sussex County on Monday mornings. And we would spend, there's a recovery farm for women in Seaford, and I'd spend the morning there. My friend Kristen, who's a co-forest therapy guide with me, and then go over to Georgetown to take the men for a walk. And we would leave 5 hours of forest therapy and be heading north and just sometimes move to tears because of the way we felt. And yes, we saw the tears from the women and stuff they were going through. I mean, I had this woman who, it was wild. Like, one of the first sessions down there, she's like, I was homeless Like I was raped in the forest and I didn't like the forest and it scared me. And you taught me that the forest loves me. I mean, I wept. And it just right
Yeah.
like as much as that's helping her, it's
It's
reminding
helping.
me why I do what I do. Right. And
Right.
and
Right.
and it's also
And
my
we need
sobriety
that.
journey has removed my I mean, it's still there, don't get me wrong. But the ego, right? My ego was in everything. And there was so much ego in the morning after winning an election, the morning after winning a primary, the morning
Mm.
after winning a
Yeah.
legislative fight. Like you just, yeah. And I don't need that now. I
I did
just,
that.
yes, it just, it's right. You know, like, but it's now to have that peace and calm and you don't have that
Yeah.
adrenaline rush of fighting this thing that you want to win. Right.
Yeah.
And then you have to investigate too. Like, was it for the right reasons? But again, that
What are your
was the
motives?
past. What I'm just grateful for now is that I don't have that same feeling when I'm working. I don't have that feeling of like, right, there's no feelings of fear. There's no feelings of resentment. There's no feelings of retaliation. Like, right, because part of it's like winning the game, but then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, who did I just piss off? And how are they going to
Right.
try to
Right.
plot and get like, politics
Right.
and government was just one
Strategy.
big game of chess. And I was so
Yeah.
good at it. But I also learned just because you're good at something doesn't mean that it makes
Doesn't
you
mean you
happy.
should.
Doesn't mean that it brings you joy. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you can
Yeah.
fall asleep at night. Doesn't mean that you can
Right.
stay asleep at night. I mean, I'd have like
Absolutely.
plotting dreams/nightmares of how I was going to get even with people. I don't
Yeah.
have those anymore. Right? Just
Well, I'm glad I was never on that list, Eric.
you were far from that list.
Well, you said a couple things. I want to step back for just a
Yeah.
second. Number one, I know I asked you the question of who are you, not numb, and you listed out some things. I want to tell you who I see you as
Okay.
that now you're not numb is absolutely brave. Again, your ability to be vulnerable is brave and it's courageous in a way that is very different when you are obviously hiding things or have very different motives. But for you to be on this journey of healing not only yourself but others, that requires bravery and stepping out and saying hard things and risking people's opinions and things like
Right.
that. And so I see you as being very brave and courageous. I see you as being resilient to go through these things and what that must have looks like to you, right? Because you have to be very self-reflective in those moments
Yeah.
of like, I can't believe I did this thing. I can't believe that this is who I have become or what I am doing. And to be able to push past that, because some people stay there, right?
Right.
They
Right.
experience a thing and they stay there with the guilt, the shame, the whatever it is. But to push past that is an absolute sense of resilience and insightful. I think that every time I talk to you and I have these conversations with you just about so many different things, right? I love your ability to push past sort of surface level and really dig deep and to figure out what this is, because that's where, again, very life changing things happen and where other people are able to have a safe space to do the same. When you're modeling something, it gives
Right.
people license to do it as well. So I just want you from the outside looking in. That's how I see you in this new. I like when I came to see you at the Winter Tour, I'm like, who is this guy? And not that I didn't love the other Eric, right?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I absolutely adore you always, but this version of you is just absolutely beautiful, and I love seeing you in this place. So I just want to speak that into you. The other thing that you said that I think was really important is you talked about nature and this feeling that kind of comes over you. And I think, you know, I look at it, you talk about higher power, and obviously, God, that for me, if he created everything, then when you're in nature, you're amongst we're with
Right.
him, right? With the
Correct.
things that he has created, that's
Right.
that closeness, right? And so that's really beautiful to be able to connect people to their spirit, connect people to something outside of the world that's immediately in front
Correct.
of them. So yeah, I can see how that could be
Yeah.
extreme, and that's what we're all really trying to get back to anyway.
Absolutely.
Is
And
is
the
our
wild thing,
spirit.
right, is like we are just so, as humans, we are so self absorbed and think we're the center of the universe. But when you,
Say
excuse
that
me,
one more time, Eric. Say that one more time.
we're so self absorbed and think we're the center of the universe. But when you go out in the forest, and that's what's the amazing thing with, forest therapy, they also call it, forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku in Japan. But when you get out in the forest and you've spent enough time, you realize and you have this moment like what you're looking at is also looking back at you. You aren't,
Mm,
it's not your place,
right, right.
everybody's place, right? And that might
Yeah.
be from the smallest ant that you see moving to like the eagle or the squirrel that it took them 30 minutes of you sitting there to finally be like, oh, I think I'm safe. They're not here to hurt me.
Right.
And or right down to like I've done a lot of readings and stuff and research on, the what's beneath the surface of the forest floor and this whole network of roots and how everything is
Yeah.
networked together.
Oh my God.
Whether
Yeah.
it's the mushrooms, right? And it starts to then just make you think, right, like the reverse, the tree, the roots, but like our lungs and then the world, and just you breathe that in. But it's all stuff. I look back often and growing up on a farm, whenever I was having all those emotional turmoil and issues, I always went outside. I always went to the forest. So my foundation was there, but it was almost like, just like I say to people, for a long time, I thought my higher power left me. And I realized like he didn't leave me. I left him. Right. But then that's where I often go back to the footprints poem and know he was carrying me.
Yeah.
But also the forest was such a nurturing place for me. But for so long, I just forgot that. And to now be going back to that, and it's wild because
Isn't that amazing? Eric, just for a sec, isn't that amazing how that seed was planted in you, like
yes,
to bring you
so
back?
correct, yes, right, or
Yeah.
the seed, right, that my soul that I was born into my body on a farm, right, to have that foundation. But then that
Yeah.
seed came back to me, and then it came back to me through like, oh, the National Forest Therapy School is having their training in Wichita and Longwood. I should sign up for it. Like, but you've been to my farm, which I'm about to say, like, I mean, we have a 10-acre farm that backs up to 1,600 acres of state forest. I mean, a trailhead to 27 miles of trails, which I lived there for 10 years and maybe walked on it 3 or 4 times.
Oh my Lord.
And then the last 2 years, right, I know that forest inside and out, but it's again, right, that seed that was planted at some point and something that was larger than myself, but a place that's not only a sanctuary for all the animals and whatnot, but has become a sanctuary for me, and then an opportunity to take people there. That's the other beautiful thing with forest therapy is like you don't need a forest though. In Japan, they have parks right in the middle of the cities, and you might get prescribed by your doctor a forest therapy session.
That's amazing.
And that's all you need is a tree and a patch of ground, right? And it's just helping people ground and take off your shoes, feel the tree. What's it the touch, the smell, what you hear, and it's that grounding piece that we all forget because we're in this fast-paced, high
Rat race,
technology.
just moving around. Yeah. This technology is gonna great, but also not great.
I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, and it's just like, what is that? And I know, like, one of my weaknesses, and I use the excuse sometimes that I'm sharing my story, but like I'm always on social media. I'm like, how do I unplug more? And I noticed that like that's where it's good when we go into the section of forest behind our house because there's no cell service, so like I can walk and my phone.
Oh, that's really good.
Right, like there's no choice. But again, I'm a firm believer that my higher power did that to me on purpose because he knew that I needed something that was going to take that phone out of my hands. Like for forest therapy school, for our practicum, we actually had to go on a 4-hour walk by ourselves and reflect. And and it was just, it was like one of the most beautiful things. And I documented it with a journal, and I had my phone with me. Again, there was no internet, but like capturing little videos and pictures. And it was just, I mean, like a half hour, you notice things you wouldn't notice, but like 4 hours, I was like you're just sitting there. And you go from a period 2, Autumn, where you're so uncomfortable, right? You're looking at the clock, like, but then all of a sudden you're like,
what's going on?
4 hours has passed, and what just happened?
Yeah,
because you're so in the moment that time doesn't mean anything, and it just flies. Yeah,
100%.
But it's that scary feeling because we're so attached. I mean, you go someplace and you realize you forgot your phone.
Numb. All these things that numb. I love to go hiking, and it's for that very reason. I love to go hiking, I should say that I love to go hiking to see waterfalls, but so I have to have a goal at the end. But to your point, that it is so like such a magical experience when you allow yourself to truly be present and to feel everything, to hear the sounds, to see the water, to feel the breeze, to all the things, and like really allow your inner thoughts to rise up to the surface for you to understand, what do I really want? How do I really feel? What's going on here? And it is an extremely unnerving experience because you will find like absolute joy, you'll find tears, you don't know why you're crying, like all the things, but it's so good. So good.
That's what's amazing
and necessary
about forest therapy. So a typical session is like 2 hours, and it takes the average person like a good 20 to 30 minutes to drop in. And what that means is that you kind of let your guard down, your blood pressure starts to lower, and you're not apprehensive like, oh, I'm here for what is this too. So in that time, you educate people on what forest bathing is, and then you do mindful movement for 10 to 15 minutes. You do some
Huh?
meditation, and then you do a series of 3 invitations, which really opens people's mind to, like, you invite them to go, maybe look at movement. What do you hear?
Uh-huh.
But at the end of the session, you challenge people, and we call these all invitations because it's an invitation. You're invited to do this. This is your session. If you
Yeah.
choose not to do the invitation, you don't have to. But the last one, which is the hardest, is we invite people to go and sit in a 20-minute sit spot. So just sit by yourself in nature for 20 minutes with nothing. And it's so wild at how challenging that is for people, but it's also transformative. Like when people come
Yes.
out of that, at the end of the hour and a half experience, the last 15, 20 minutes is we have a traditional tea ceremony like they do in Japan. And that's one to kind of share what the whole experience was like, but it's also an opportunity to kind of ease people back into reality. But what I
Right.
find
Right.
during that session is, people will weep, they will laugh, but what they always say is like, how do I replicate this? How do I do
Yes.
this every day in my life? I want
Right.
this feeling.
Right. Right.
And I've, again, done folks in recovery homes. I've done all elected officials, couples, individuals, but it's so recharging for me every time when you just see that something that's so basic and that we all can do, but you need it to be guided there, right? Because we just don't take the
Yeah.
time for it.
We make things very complex, and
Yeah.
so sometimes we could just take it down to the root. We would be much
Yeah.
better. So here's a question. It may be kind of a silly question, but did you have to grieve your old self? Like,
Oh,
are
yes.
there
So thank you for
specific?
asking that question. Again,
Okay.
I just felt the emotion. So when I was in Utah, we did a sweat lodge. Which, are you familiar with
Mm.
sweat lodges? And they're
Yes.
like, to be done the right way, it's only supposed to be done by a Native American elder. You'll see a lot of
Mm.
sweat lodges that are one off that people are kind of
Yeah.
dancing now. So we had this guy, Dustin, who, we got up at like 4 a.m. We drove up, we picked up our rocks. We then picked up the wood, we started the fire, and we were supposed to write down on a piece of paper things that we wanted to let go of. And
Okay.
one of my little crazy things that everybody knows, I used to always say that I have a small bladder, so I have to go to the bathroom a lot. I've now learned it's an overactive bladder that tends to be in flow with when I think I can't go to the bathroom, I need to go to the bathroom. So, and the
Okay.
reason I'm sharing this is like, because you went into the sweat lodge and so experienced, and there's no bathrooms. And I was like, what am I going to do?
We were panicked.
I was panicked. I went through
Okay.
4 hours without going to the restroom. That's just how monumental this experience was. And the first part was we lit that fire and everybody was kind of there. And they actually took a break for people who needed to go find a restroom. And I didn't even hear that because all of a sudden I felt like I was watching. And I try to like go back and forth and not say old Eric, but young Eric. Like old Eric is somebody
Okay.
in the future, but watched him
Yeah.
go up in flames. Like literally autumn go up in flames. And I couldn't really move. I couldn't speak. And that was
Yeah.
before we went into the sweat lodge. Went into the sweat lodge and that experience was unlike anything in my life. I did some breath work when I did my firewalking training, which was similar, just in terms of just transformative. But I came out of there and the way, one of the instructors, staffers from the bridge clinic where I was said to me, like, I wept, like I was bellowing, right? Like a calf that lost its mother. And I remember I
Yeah.
wandered and sat under this tree and it's exactly what it was, right? It was young me, old me, whatever, just and it was like spiritual. There was nothing that was sad about it, but it was so
Okay.
transformative to just like it was like I let him go. The other thing that happened that was wild out there that made this experience so monumental is I did a lot of energy work, Reiki work, and when I first got out there, they constantly kept telling me that I was holding everything, stress, anxiety in my gut. And for
In your
years
butt.
had
Yeah.
all sorts of GI issues, right? So I
Right.
had this one energy worker, Reiki person who, she had me close my eyes, was doing the sound bowls, and she's like, I want you to picture a fireball moving down your body. And when it hits your feet, I'll be pulling them. Don't worry about me. Right. So I went through this whole exercise. And at the end of that, it was wild. And I can still see it. It was like a staircase. There was a baby at the top that I couldn't see, but I saw a hand come down and pull the baby up the last step. And I was just like, what is that? Right. And I
Yeah.
journaled on it and
Yeah.
stuff. And then 2 days later, I was doing work with a hypnotherapist and all of, when I was working with her, she then said something to me like, "When's the last time that you felt like you were enough, when you were good enough?" And I just said, like, 2 years old, I can see myself sitting on my parents' old farmhouse porch, and she told me to go talk to myself and tell that little boy what he needed to hear.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward the sweat lodge, I realized that hand was me pulling
My
up that
goodness.
2-year-old. And I still on him. I mean, you can see the emotion here because it's so simple. It's so like, right? Young me would have been like, people will think I'm crazy. What, like, it was real. I know what it
Yeah.
was. It
Yeah.
finally told me I was good enough. It let me go. I mean, I grew up where I had to, and I'm just going to say it again, I'm real, raw, and open. Like, I had to hear the word faggot. I was called a faggot all the time. I was told by the Catholic Church I had no place. Again, my father, when I came out, asked me to come home and get married on the farm, but the stuff my father would say, my uncle would say. And I finally was like, I am good enough. Like, I don't have to be anything
Good.
for. And
Yeah.
what was wild is it went back to that 2-year-old me. Like, how and what. And again, it's no, I hold no anger or blame towards anybody that
Yeah.
hurt me, right? Like, but as society as a whole, and this is even so much truer today, and I'm just so conscious with our 3 little boys, like, the words you say,
Oh,
actions you
yeah,
take, right? That
absolutely.
crap sits with you and you hold it.
Yeah.
And I am convinced
Yeah.
now more than ever, like, you can hold it in your gut. It can turn into disease. It can turn into chronic
Oh,
pain.
yeah.
It can turn into
Yeah.
cancer. So again,
Yeah.
just that sweat lodge, and that whole experience in Utah, I came back, and it was hard coming back. I mean, on one hand, just even the physical side of things, I think I lost 6 pounds during that 3 weeks because there's no gluten, no sugar, no caffeine. You're just pretty.
I don't know if I'd make it.
It was, um, but then you're in a desert, right? So it was 107 to 115, but it's this dry heat. And I remember it was July 15th through July 30th. And I remember flying into the Philly airport and the humidity hitting me when I got off the plane. And then I'll never forget, Cam, who lives with us, drove us back to the farm. The kids were excited to see me. But then it was sensory overload. Like, everything was
Yeah.
lush and green, the brightness of the flowers, right? There was just, you
Right.
got so used to
Right.
those earth tones, and just 3 weeks of just even
Very
keel
different.
and calm. And so I had to relearn, or not even relearn, but I just had to learn,
Acclimate.
reacclimate, but
Reacclimate.
also, like, how do you, and I was saying to Jonathan yesterday, like, one of my big triggers right now is like the kids making loud noises, especially when they're fighting. And so I'm
Mm.
trying to investigate that, right? Like, where does
Yeah.
that come for, and what is still back
Absolutely.
there?
That's good.
Yeah, like, because it
That's good.
definitely, I go from, I might seem peace and whatever, but like, I turn into a crazy man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not helping. So where is this coming from, and what is it? And that's where it's great, like, that I'm going to constantly be exploring, right, for the rest of my life,
Absolutely.
and figuring out, and I know there's something there. The other wild thing on this journey, I realized, like, I always thought childhood trauma meant like death in your, when your parents, you had to be molested, right? I
Oh,
didn't, right. And I
no. Yeah.
didn't realize that. Like, the folks
Yeah.
in Utah, the practitioners taught me, right? Like, again, words you hear, lack of role
Yeah.
models that you don't see, like
All
societies
of
that
that is
set you that, yeah,
re-traumatizing. Yeah.
and that all becomes like, I just had this belief, like, oh, I'm strong. I had this great, amazing upbringing. Childhood trauma never touched me, and that was part of my problem. Like, I just, on one hand, that was our
Seeing that
strong,
different.
tough German upbringing, like Roman Catholic,
Yeah.
work hard, play by the rules, you get what you deserve. And the church taught us, right? Like, bad things happen to you if you deserve them.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
I
goodness.
mean, that
Okay.
that was how we were raised. I mean, it was like, right? I mean, the whole hell concept. And I apologize ahead of time, anybody that's listening to this, but like, how could a loving God, a higher power that creates all of us, then going to send us to hell?
Okay. Look, yes. So Eric, look, there's so many things. First of all,
Sorry.
so many things. No, it's so many things. First of all, I just because here's the thing. I truly, when I say I love God,
Yeah.
like not superficially, like truly do. And that's one of the things that saddens my heart is that you have people who claim to love God and they're selling a representation of him that is not accurate
Right.
and it's detrimental to people.
And they don't
And that
realize
is,
that. They just don't realize that.
they
Right.
they don't realize that, which is why, and especially if you have that platform, you have to take it seriously. Like, that's not something to play with. It's
Right.
so important because we are mental, emotional, spiritual beings. That is a huge part of who we are. And if that's going to be something that you take on as a calling or responsibility, you had better be locked in. Like, I mean, locked in, because I like things like this, right? Things like this. And I wish that the church had not failed you and other people in that way. Um, you uh you said something that was also really good. You're saying like these things, and I'm like, Eric, wait a minute, don't breeze past it because it's
Right.
like so good. This idea about being curious about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that not enough people are
Right.
curious about yourself
Yeah.
and where these things come from so that you can deal with them.
Right.
The point that you talked about being back to a 2-year-old, everyone has those moments if they sit and
Correct.
again ask, to me, ask God,
Right.
show me where this took a turn, show
Right.
me, and just quiet for a minute and allow that to come back, and you will see that.
Right.
I had a moment when I was 14. I remember my stepmother said something that was so ugly to me, and that changed how I felt about myself, how I saw everything.
Yeah. See?
But I had
And it
no
sticks with
idea.
you. Yeah.
It does. It does.
And you
And
hear it
words
over and
matter.
over and over
Oh my God.
again.
Oh my God.
Like
And it
you
affects
probably played that
every
in your head thousands of times, that narrative, and believed it.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Words absolutely matter. How we talk to ourselves and how we talk to other people. And if nobody gets anything else from this talk, I hope that they get that, to be very, very intentional about your words,
Yeah.
about how you speak to yourself and about how you speak to other people. It does. It absolutely changes how people. You have the ability to speak life or death.
Yeah.
Life or death.
Yeah.
So choose life. Choose
Yeah.
life. Is what's something, one very sort of specific thing, right, that you are proud of now that you could not name before?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, and I actually did a TikTok video the other day, and I realized, right, like I used to look in the mirror and despise myself, disgust,
Mm,
just so, and I look in the mirror now and I find sometimes I laugh, but it's like this like I would with you, right?
yeah,
Sometimes you and I look at each other and we don't even have to say words. We just laugh.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's the ability to love myself now,
I
right? Just
love
at
that.
that core, that it's
Love
just
that.
like
Yeah.
I was never able to do like, but I didn't know what I didn't know. But what I didn't understand is that's what I was missing. Like it wasn't
Right.
something physical I could get from somebody. It wasn't something emotional I could get from somebody. It wasn't
Mm,
like a success in a job. Like, right. I was chasing all that stuff. And again, I was so blessed and fortunate. Like if you look at the full package, so blessed. I mean, from the
yeah.
political career to the husband, to the kids, to the farm, but like I just didn't realize the issue was I just didn't love myself, Autumn. And
Yeah.
and now, I mean, and I remember that like when I was in Utah, one of the practitioners said something to me about this. And I remember when we got to this house, there were 4 of us in a house. There were these beautiful condos with a swimming pool, hot tub. You would walk halfway up the landing, and there was a freaking mirror the size of it had to be like 3 feet by 10 feet on the landing.
Huge.
And when I
Hmm.
moved into the house for the 3 weeks, I was just disgusted. But then it was like the first or second day that I was like, every time you pass that mirror, you have to stop, look at it, and say something positive about yourself.
Love it.
And
Love
that's what
it.
I started, and I still do that to this day. I mean, sometimes it's
Intentional.
like, you're all right, Eric, you got this, like, you're amazing. But I just think that ability for self love
Yeah.
and self respect is just, it was not there. And I can
Yeah.
see now how I was just a shell of a person. Even when the things were the most amazing around me, I didn't know why I felt so awful. And it just goes back to that self love and self respect, which again, you hear it. Like I remember the first therapist saying it, but like, unless somebody helps you like figure out how do you in a healthy way
Get to the root
investigate
of it.
that and
Yeah.
get to the root of it. And
Well, and that's
what
the
also makes
thing.
me sad is just so many people like having attempted and been down that path and I still have the suicide notes from trying to attempt suicide. Like, years ago, I used to be like, how am I still here? Now I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a gift, and you had a message and a story to tell. And
Absolutely.
the story and message to tell would not have been there if you didn't experience that. Right.
That part. I'm big on testimony. Tell
Yeah.
your testimony.
I mean, it
Go
is
so that
just, and there's a
someone else
reason, right? Like,
can thrive.
it was interesting. Like, I journaled through all those years and still, sorry, I had a cold 2 weeks ago and I still have a little bit of a tickle in my throat.
Oh my God.
I have probably 8 or 9 Mead notebook journals in my safe that I've
Do
told
you go back
myself.
and read them?
I have like probably 2 or 3 times, but I know someday I
Really?
have to do something with them.
Okay.
Right? It's a
I
story
listen,
to tell.
I threw
It's,
mine away.
did you? Yeah. I mean, there were multiple times. Like, I remember when we moved from the townhouse to the farm, I was like, I don't need these anymore. I'm like, and something just told me to keep them. Like, just keep them.
I'm glad you did.
Put
I'm
them in
glad you did.
that safe.
I think I felt like revisiting was, and maybe maybe I
No,
read
because
them
that's,
too
I know what you're
soon
gonna
or whatever.
say. That's like there's no looking back. Throw it, get rid of it, right? It'll, like, not that it'll cause you a relapse or cause you to go back, but you'll just relive it too much. Where now I've
Right.
realized it's less of for me, right? And it's just why, I remember when I first started my sobriety journey, a lot of people were like, be quiet, be private, don't tell people. But I felt like I was doing a disservice. And I know everybody has their own lot in life, right? Their own path.
Right.
And some people can't tell their story for whatever reasons. But I've now realized, like, someday those journals, like being on this podcast with you, like,
It'll be a
if
blessing.
I
Or a
can just
blessing.
help the one next person that's sick and
Yeah.
suffering, right? The one next
Yeah.
person that doesn't feel like they're good enough, the one next person that doesn't love themselves, the one next person that has like an issue with sexuality or with religion, whatever, like, that is my purpose. And I always thought, like, I was chasing these high level job titles and salary, right? Like, that was all the stuff that mattered. And again, I don't resent this against my father, but the way he was taught coming from Germany and starting the farm, right? Like, that is a sign of success. That's the true American dream.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
go to school. I was the first generation to go to college in my family, get a, and so I chased that and kind of thought that was my North Star. And
Yeah.
now to
Well, you
know,
only know what you know.
but the seed was always planted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I left home to join AmeriCorps. And I remember my dad being
Yeah.
so upset. He's like, you just graduated with a 4-year degree, and now you're going to go out and volunteer for a year. And
AmeriCorps.
something just told me, right, that it was the right thing to do. And, and I got sidetracked in politics, but I ultimately ended up there. I was like, oh, you can help people in politics, and you can. I also
Yeah.
want, I just need to say for a second, for folks that do list this, I'm not trashing politics. I'm just saying I learned it wasn't good for me. It wasn't
there
good
it
for
is.
my soul. It wasn't good for
And
my
there it is.
being. And
Yeah.
and there are people that have that calling, and there's people that do it that were good. And again, like, I was blessed and fortunate to have all these electeds that trusted me for 23 years. But it was so
Yeah.
nice to, like, I don't have to make a livelihood doing that.
Well, I was shocked when you told me that. I was like,
Right. Why, I think,
wait a minute.
Lydia York, who's the state auditor, I mean, she was the one I was working for at that point when I sent my letter of resignation from the Salt Lake City airport. I think she was like, I mean, I regrettably
Fell out of
accept.
chair.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, but it was so hard. And I even remember, when I left, Governor Meyer, when he was then county executive, Meyer, like, it wasn't until I got back from the bridge, like a year and a half later, that I was talking to him, that, right, even he realized it wasn't him, right? These people sometimes think it's something they did. And I'm like, no, right? And that's human nature. We do that.
Yeah.
And that to me shows how Matt was a good person, Lydia was a good person to work for. And
Right.
they thought it was something they did that was wrong. But it was so hard to explain to them in words this journey that I was on. And what I also learned when I was on it is, like, I don't need to. Right? Like, I knew to, like, continue on it. It was hard to, I mean, even sometimes to my husband. Like, there's times where, like, I'll say things, do things, and he'll look at me and he's like, how do you want me to respond right now? And I was like, I don't know.
But he asked.
Right.
He is asking.
He's
And let
asking.
that be a lesson too.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
Ask people, how do you need me to show up for you in this
Like, I
moment?
remember, I know you're, sometimes the recipient of my morning gratitude list. Like, I remember when I started doing those, people, like, would text Jonathan or, like, what are we supposed to do when we get them from him?
I love it.
But it
I
wasn't,
love it.
it's turned into one of these things, like, and I don't mean to offend anybody, like, I do it more for me.
Yeah.
But then share it, right? It's just put the word out there. Like, and the reality is, for me, and I've learned, like, if I start my day with my morning prayer, meditation, and then 5 things that I'm grateful for, it just sets the tone for me for the
It's
day.
your whole
I
day.
mean, the reality is
Changes
5
the whole
minutes later,
day.
it could be a shit show with the kids,
Yeah,
right? But like you started, you got out of the bed on the right foot. And it's just such a,
absolutely.
it's such a, again, a small thing, but something that has just been instilled upon me that when I start the day that way, and then at the end of the day, like give thanks for the things that
Well,
happened.
there's actually, again, science behind this
Yeah.
too, that we have these neural pathways and we have the ability, your brain is always sort of looking for shortcuts.
Yes.
And when you are constantly feeding it with gratitude and thankfulness and
100%.
those types of things,
You're
your
building the new
brain
neural pathways.
immediately,
Yes.
yes, you're building new pathways, and your brain is now immediately starting to look for ways to be thankful and grateful.
Right.
And so it
Yeah.
changes your
And when you
perspective, how
don't
you,
do that, right, it's just like a rut and you're driving a bike and you're trying
yeah,
to get out of the rut and you're
yeah.
pulled right back. You're pulled right
Right,
back. I
right.
mean,
Because
you
your
have to
brain
do
is
things
doing
that
what it's
help
been
you
trained to do.
build these new neural pathways. Yes, and
Yeah,
100%. I've read some of those
100%.
articles too. And it's wild to think, right? Because for a lot of times people thought you needed like the drugs, the alcohol but like when you're clear of that and then you're
Think
doing,
just a
especially
thought.
that's like when you do the breath work, when you do the meditation, when you do the gratitude, like
Yeah.
it changes the frequency in your body.
Ever.
I remember before I went to Utah, I mean, there was a good 3 weeks that I just didn't want to get out of bed. And Jonathan was like, I just need you, like, just get up and go for a half-hour walk a day. But you get into
Yeah,
that rut. It
yeah,
was just,
yeah.
it's better if I just lay in this bed and cover myself up and not see or talk to anybody.
And that's the hard part for a lot of people, is that just that first step.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I mean? Just push past that first hard step, and then
Yeah.
it gets a little bit easier and easier and easier. One of the things that you said, and I want to again call this out, is you talked about this idea of being so blessed, having all these things around you, but still feeling a certain kind of way. And I a lot of people experience that, where they can actively look around and be like, I'm not homeless, and I have food to eat, and I have a job, and kids and spouse and all these different things. And I really want to call this out, and I want you to as well, is the reality that that doesn't it doesn't make you ungrateful
No.
because you
Right.
are having a different experience. It doesn't
Right.
make you like this terrible person who doesn't recognize the good in your life because you are dealing with other things.
Right.
Both things can be true at the same time. I can be absolutely thankful for everything I have and still have a void, or still have
Yeah.
something that I am battling with. Two things can be true.
Right.
Yeah. So
100%.
freeing people from
Yeah.
that. I think, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's like, oh, I can't complain. I'm ungrateful. No,
No,
it's
because that only compounds
acknowledge.
the situation too and the problem, right?
Right.
And it just
Right.
makes it worse. I mean, that's the other thing this whole journey has taught me from sobriety to now is just I need to state my feelings. I need like
Yeah.
it's for the first time in my life, and when I'm kind of doing the energy work and the chakras, like what I realize so often is like my throat chakra is like I never used my own voice for me. I used it for a lot of people. But
For
what
other
does
people,
Eric need? What does Eric want? What fulfills me? What doesn't fulfill
advocating
me?
for yourself.
Right? Like knowing no is an
Yeah.
okay answer. No is a complete sentence.
Complete sentence.
Boundaries, like just all that, just is
That's
a
one of my favorite sentences,
yes,
actually.
yeah. But it just I didn't know, and it would cause so much angst if I had to plan on how to tell somebody no. I mean, I would worry for days. Like, how am I going to tell this person no? And it could be the smallest thing, right? But it was
Yeah.
always just like, I don't want to disappoint. And now I'm like, okay. And I do it in a tactful way, but I'm like, if it doesn't serve me and my purpose, and it's going to like, corrode
Boundaries.
my mental health, my physical health,
Yeah.
my spiritual health. But I was never
Boundaries are
like, I'd
good.
rather just suffer in silence, right? I mean, I joke around with people. I'm still this way. Like, you go to a restaurant and you see the servers having a bad day, they bring you the wrong meal. Like, I will eat the meal. They brought me the wrong meal.
Eric,
Right now, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And I've been with friends who've been like, "Wait, did you order that?" I'm like, "No, but it's okay. It's okay."
didn't you order a salad? You got a whole steak in front of you.
Right?
You're like, it's fine. I'm
It's
just gonna
fine.
eat it.
It's
I'm
fine.
just gonna eat
Don't
it.
make a big deal. Don't make a big deal. Yeah. But that's also,
Well,
and if she watches that, she'll get upset with me. But I mean, that was also comes from like we watched my mother many times like send food back,
Mhm.
leave a penny on the table for a tip, or get our whole family up and walk out of the restaurant when they didn't serve fast enough. I mean, and I
That
just
was not
remember
planned.
being no, and I just remember being that like, no, this is awful, right? Like almost I can picture myself as a little kid, like looking back and lipping, sorry. So, but again, like I know that's part of the root of why I'm like this. So,
Yeah,
okay, Eric,
yeah.
okay, that happened, but now be healthy for yourself. You and
Get
your
some
dad's
balance.
voice. Yes, there's a balance.
Get some
Exactly.
balance. Get some balance. You don't have to be extremes on either
Right.
side. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, advocating for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so this has been amazing. I appreciate everything that you have given me. It's helping me to even just be like self-reflective with myself and motivated and inspired. And I know other people will be as well. I have one more question to ask you
Okay.
before my final question,
Okay.
right? My final question that I ask everybody, but I do want to because I really am curious about this. You've been again very vocal about and transparent about your healing and wellness and incorporating other people into that journey with you. What does it look like when no one's watching? When you are by yourself, like what is the thing that really just brings you
Yeah, it's
like
definitely it's
world peace?
meditation, it's prayer, it's it's very ritual, sometimes
Mm,
ceremonial.
okay.
Like at night before I go to bed and I'm in the room by myself and like I'll light candles, I'll use some sage and do some smudging. I'm actually starting to share that a little bit. I don't know if you've seen the last couple of days, like I have like shared these evening blessings and a lot of like Native American stuff. And it's funny because again, that's me when no one's watching. In the beginning, I was like, oh, people are gonna think I'm like woo woo doing some type of witchcraft stuff, right? But
Right.
it's again my connection to my soul, to my higher power. um, it's also like when no one's watching, it's still the battle in here, and it's less of a battle and more of a conversation, right, with new
That's
Eric,
good.
old Eric,
That's good.
and analyzing, right, or
That's
talking
good.
myself through a situation, talking myself through
Yeah.
a scenario. you know the kids are fighting and it's triggering me, saying to Jonathan, like, this is triggering me, like that was something I couldn't do before, right? But so much
Yeah.
self-analyzing in a positive way to really investigate, okay, where is this coming from? And again, a lot of that is when no one's watching because I do it silently. I do find now I sleep so much better than I used to. I used to have so many sleep problems, and I also for years didn't dream, and now I have these dreams that are so
Goodness.
vivid, like a
So
lot of,
vivid, so real.
yes, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's right. And you kind of, again, I get up and sometimes I'll grab my journal fast to try to just write
Write
it
it
down
down.
because you'll
Write
forget, and
it
later in the
down.
day you're like, wait, was that a dream last night? Or
Yeah.
but I think, too, again, when no one's watching, is just, I think for years just saw me as this like overachiever, good person, but busybody, never ability to sit still. Up until I got sober and even got back from New Jersey, from Utah, I never wanted to be by myself, and now there's
Mm.
nothing better than being by myself. I was afraid of being by myself with my thoughts, with my feelings, with my
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah.
I would schedule myself the kids, play dates,
To death.
and now it's just this like there's nothing more amazing than when I look at my schedule on a Friday and realize we don't have anything for a weekend, which was never right. Like
I'm with you.
we had
I'm
Isaac's
with you.
birthday today and it was great, but it
Oh,
was just like, damn, this is why I don't do these things anymore. Like I used to have play dates like that every weekend, and like sometimes
right.
multiple play dates, and set up the meals and set up, and just a birthday party with 9 kids was enough to fill me, right? But then I also knew, what do I need to do to fill my cup
Yeah.
so I have
Yeah.
more in
No,
my
that's
cup to give
good.
to others? Yeah,
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah, a
yeah,
lot of people do that where they are way over scheduling themselves. But again, it's to keep from having to sit still and
yeah.
actually and
But I think
experience
too,
the
and I
thing.
think you see this sometimes in some of the work that you do, like we're kind of taught as a society right now, the more you do, the more you're seen, the better you are, right? Like
Yeah,
how
the
many
more
cocktail
important you
hours, how
are.
many rallies, how like what can we get to? But
Right.
it depletes you.
Right.
And
That's an understatement,
yeah,
Eric. Complete like under the floor. Are you
Yeah.
serious? Like
I mean,
you
I
are
used to
like,
think,
I
and it
cannot.
was even post having kids. It wasn't just pre-kids or pre-Jonathan. Like
Ugh.
it used to be like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I got home at 11 o'clock at night. That was a good night. I got a lot. Like, get a couple hours of sleep and get up and do it again. And now I'm like, oh no, I don't have anything tonight. My butt's gonna be in bed by 8:30, and I'm gonna wake up refreshed.
Magical.
Right, right. Like that's what I used to think. Like adulting would be this, and like adulting, like this time of year is going to bed when there's still a little bit of daylight out. Like that is
And,
amazing.
and I love it. I told somebody the other day, I said, you know where my favorite place to be is? And they're like, well, I'm like, in my bed.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I brought an amazing mattress.
Yes, I'm
I
there. Yeah,
love,
foam, and there's
love.
just something about it's almost like you're being engulfed by something. Like it
Yeah,
just there's this level of
feels
comfort and
good.
just satisfaction now when I lay down at night. Right, that I used to need an 18-hour day to think
Yeah.
I was good enough,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, no, I had a solid 12-hour day and a calm evening with the kids, and now this bed feels freaking amazing.
And now this
Yeah.
bed feels amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. When this interview is over, I might go lay down.
Yeah, Molly,
And
nice. I'll send the
I might go
positive
lay down.
vibes your way. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So this has been an absolutely
It's been fun.
fantastic
It's been
conversation.
really good. Yeah.
It has been really good. Has it been good for you?
Yeah. I mean, and it was funny because, like, about 2 or 3 hours before, I was like, oh, I haven't really put thought into this. I'm like, no, she told me not to. So
Yeah.
don't. And then it was
Just
funny. I was
let it
going to do it
happen.
from the house in the guest bedroom. And I said to my husband, Jonathan, I was like, oh, is it usually, it's quiet in there when you do stroke call, right? And he's like, no. Like, if you want quiet. And I was like, oh. So I'm like running, right? I'm running up here to get to Odessa to do it here where it could be quiet. But that was like, the most I thought about it, which is why it was so fun.
Yeah,
because I just, like you said, I just let the conversation go where it goes.
Just let it flow. And
that's
you
also
said
the flip side of me now not being in politics. Like, I never did stuff without being scripted, without bullet points, without doing
we had to.
right. But like for me too.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing
Yeah.
stuff, I'm like, oh, I want to know anything. I want to make sure I'm covering these points. I'm like, no, Autumn will ask the questions and I'll just answer. And
Yeah, no, and you had so many amazing gems and jewels in there. That's why I was like, oh my God, Eric, wait, stop. Oh my God, wait. Go back to that. Go back to that. That was so good. Those are really good call outs. So I appreciate this conversation. And again, I just appreciate you in my life and you being so open and welcoming.
my friend.
Yes, love.
There's a reason
absolutely.
on that first call, and I'll still remember it. And for the folks listening, I mean, I was like, all of a sudden, Vanessa, who was the CAO, I was deputy CAO, was like, yeah, on this call. And it was a vaccination call. And there's like all these people talking. I was like, who is this amazing woman that was just, because it was your laugh. And I was just like, I'm going to be friends with her. And it was,
You called me immediately. Also, Eric, like, let's be fair. I was giving everybody the business on that call. So there was also that.
Yeah, I was like,
But you're right.
I think I did call you after it to be like,
you did immediately.
I'm trying to
You're
figure out what my role, right?
Can we talk?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we were
putting each other's lives for a reason, and it was just
Yeah,
it was through the vehicle of the county, right? But here we are today.
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
different things.
yeah. It's done some amazing things.
Yeah.
Okay, so my final question to round this out and put a pretty nice bow on it. I ask everybody this question: what is, and I'm sure you have a lot of things, but I want you to pick one.
Okay.
Okay. The most life-changing advice you have ever been given.
I think it goes back to what I've shared multiple times through here. It's just to love yourself first.
Okay.
To respect yourself first. To talk to yourself the way you talk to other people. Right? It's all this stuff that's so basic, but I never did that. And again, talk to yourself the way you talk to other people. Like if you're a kind person. Yeah. Right. Just with that caveat. But you know what I mean? Like the stuff I would say to myself, I would never say to another human being that I used to say to myself.
Yes.
Right. And being,
right.
Again, just that self-love, that self-respect. It's something so basic and so simple, but it did not sink into my being until those 3 weeks in Utah coming up on 2 years ago. And it was so consistently taught, right? But it was interesting because if you go back and look at the curriculum, what we were doing, it was never, like, I don't think it would say like self-love and self-respect were part of it, right? But it's at the core. And if we don't love ourselves, if we don't respect ourselves, how can we love or respect anybody else?
Absolutely.
And it was just, and I think the reason why it's so profound, like that people said it to me, but it was also the profound part, just like I was talking about with the mirror and stuff, like to feel it,
Yeah.
to feel what self-love
That's
was.
good.
Yeah. I mean, that's
That's
such a
good.
wild, amazing feeling. I mean, and again, going back to that, like the one that will always stick out to me, which is the root of all of this, is that like go talk to your 2-year-old self
Yeah.
and tell that 2-year-old what he needs to hear.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's good.
I wept during that. And I often, I mean, you saw me choke up as I started to talk about that because it was just, and I could see him. I could see him just as plain. It was like he was sitting right in front of me.
Well, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to have that experience.
Yeah.
You're so right. There's a difference between knowing something and like
Knowing
knowing
something, yes.
something, right? And so
Intuition, yes.
yes, and being able to say, "Oh, I know I should love myself," but then like knowing that you love
Right.
yourself. They're
Well, it's
two
just like
very
right when you
different
love
experiences.
someone, like you can say you love someone,
Yeah.
but when you love someone, you feel that.
You know
And
that.
and
You
it's
know
like
it.
we do that with ourselves. Like, oh, I love myself,
Yeah.
right? But it's just you're just saying it. But you know when
Right.
you feel it. And that feeling
Right.
was just foreign to me. It was something I had never experienced. Uh,
Well, and it shows up in how you in the treatment.
yeah.
You
When
can't
people
say,
like, I
"Oh,
saw,
myself,"
elected
and then
officials
treat
the other day who
yourself
were just like,
bad.
you look amazing. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just being me.
I'm loving
I'm in the
myself.
forest.
That's
I'm
what you
driving a
should
school
have said.
bus part time. Like I'm just doing my
Are you
stuff that
really?
brings. Yeah, I've done it for 2 years. I actually end in 2 weeks, but I've been driving the school bus for the daycare center too. And yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday a.m. You haven't seen any? Yeah,
How I did not know
it's a
that. I
little
love
bus. It's
that.
10 passengers. It's bright blue. It has bees and flowers all over it, and yes. And my two boys happen to be on it. Like the first day I drove it, they're like, "Why are you driving the bus?" And my husband kept saying to me, like, is it bringing you joy? And for 2 years, it brought me joy, but it's time to move on. That's another thing. Like I
Okay.
realized, like, it brought me joy. It fulfilled that piece, that part that I needed, that kind of, I needed a little bit of a schedule as I was taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And that Tuesday,
Mhm.
Wednesday, Thursday, AM, PM, driving the little bus was
Did
amazing.
that
But
for you.
yeah, but it's funny when like,
That's good.
I'll post pictures sometimes and some of the elected officials like, are you like driving a bus? Like when I saw the governor the other day, he's like, Eric, why aren't you driving the bus? I'm like, don't worry, I'll be late. So then like I'm literally driving the bus like in a tie and dress shirt because I come from Dover. Yeah, and I'm like, sometimes you got to
If
dress
you
up
love
to drive a
politics to
bus.
drive a bus,
Yes, right. I often joke around like it's the best $15 an hour I've ever made.
there it
Like it
is.
just,
There
yep,
it is.
yep.
Money, it's not about the
No,
money. It's
no,
not about the
no.
money. Yeah,
Every
that's
holiday,
so good.
decorate the bus. Had it decorated with the
Love
rate.
it.
Like, yeah, it's just little things that bring you joy. Chase them.
Oh my God. Well, again, thank you.
You're
I
welcome. Thank
appreciate you
you.
so much. I hope that all of you have enjoyed this conversation and that of all the amazing things that Eric said, at least one thing sticks with you that you can carry with you into the next part of your journey, either for yourself or someone that you know. But have an amazing week and be blessed. Bye.